If McKeesport scores, we'll see what they do with the extra point, and we may continue. In motion, looking to pass, throws it, incomplete, game over, Belle Vernon with the win.
Live from our Seton Hill University studios, this is Westmoreland on the Gridiron on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Here's your host, Sean Meyers.
We welcome you into another episode of Westmoreland on the Gridiron here on the Westmoreland Sports Network each and every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Sean Meyers and Dan Flickinger talking high school football across the county. And Flick, we've got a lot to get to in this show. As always, we'll run down all the scores from week 2 of the WPIAL schedule. We'll also look at the top performers, the plays of the week, a jam-packed segment for plays of the week. We'll hear from Matt Humbert, the head coach of the Belle Vernon area Leopards after his team's thrilling victory, and Tasso Whipple, the star running back who guided Penn-Trafford to a big win as well. And then we'll look ahead at the week 3 games with our preview of what's to come. But first, let's talk about some of the biggest stories. I just mentioned Matt Humbert. He's an awfully happy head coach because his Leopards scored an overtime thriller against McKeesport. Maybe the most notable game across the entire WPIAL, even though it was non-conference. Leopards winning 21-14 in overtime. And we know that these teams, whether they are in the same conference from a few years ago or in different conferences and classifications, it's always going to be a great one for the Leopards. A team that defeated them last year, they get a measure of revenge in overtime. Just a terrific high school football game.
It absolutely was. And, going into halftime, I was talking with Dave Franzak, who called the game for us. And the first half wasn't real entertaining. Thought it might be a little bit more entertaining. But then again, smash mouth, hard-nosed football game. Maybe it wasn't going to be. But the way it ended, you look back at it and you say, wow, what a football game. And both defenses played great. And I know that, going into a game like that, there's a lot of talk, obviously, around Quentin Martin. McKeesport did a great job of not allowing him to beat them, but that allowed other guys to step up. And we saw Anthony Cruz, the Cruz missile, doing it in a big way with a couple of touchdowns. Locks hit him on Belle Vernon's first touchdown, a beautiful pass, made the catch. And, of course, he was able to score the game-tying touchdown to eventually force overtime on that long run. So you look at Cruz on one side, but the guy that may have been a little bit unsung defensively, and I got a chance to see it up close and personal, was Tanner Moody. He made 12 tackles in the game for Belle Vernon, a couple of goal line stands for the Leopards, or McKeesport could have easily won that game. He made some big tackles there as well near the goal line. So if I'm giving out game balls, certainly Cruz on one side, but Tanner Moody on the other. And I think that just goes to show that Belle Vernon has some other guys other than Quentin Martin and Braden Locks that really stepped up in a big way and can continue to do that, if all the attention is on Q. So I think that was a huge win for Belle Vernon, even though it's non-conference, and they're going to have another big challenge coming up this week against the Penn-Trafford team that beat them last year as well. But as you mentioned, Sean, just a great, great high school football game. It goes into overtime, and you kind of feel like when the game went into OT, that I don't know. I just felt that Belle Vernon was going to win the game, and Locke scores the touchdown, and the rest is history. So again, just very exciting, and certainly McKeesport has to be really happy with the way that they played too. Their defense was outstanding in the game, much like Belle Vernon's was. And again, one team had to win, one team had to lose, and they play the game 10 times. Maybe each team wins 5.
Yeah, and it's really a tip of the cap to the Tigers because we knew that the Leopards were going to be really good because they returned almost everyone from their team last year. McKeesport lost probably their 2 best players in Boyd and Perryman from a year ago. Now, I know they have another Boyd on the team, but I didn't know how good they would be. But I think the first 3 weeks show that they are a terrific team, and that is a massive win for the Leopards. And again, we mentioned it's non-conference, but I think that when the WPIAL created some more interesting non-conference matchups a few years ago, this is what they were hoping for, right? Last week, Belle Vernon and McKeesport. This week, Belle Vernon and PT. People get excited for these, even though it really doesn't have much in terms of playoff implications.
Yeah, and you have obviously Belle Vernon and Thomas Jefferson coming up very soon as well. But yeah, I mean, this is what high school football is all about. That's something that you hear from me on the show, talk about all the time. When, last year, Hempfield and Penn-Trafford played, that was incredible atmosphere. We had so many viewers. We had a ton of viewers, by the way, for McKeesport and Belle Vernon, too, for the people that couldn't go. And there were a lot of fans there as well. So, again, it's what high school football is all about when these rivals can get together. I think that, Belle Vernon and McKeesport, maybe they weren't rivals before, but of course they have played the last several years. You kind of feel the same way with Belle Vernon and Penn-Trafford just because of the pride that the teams have, in their football programs. So I think that makes it really exciting and great for us fans and broadcasters to be able to sit back and watch them.
Absolutely. And we mentioned upcoming this week, and we're going to look a little bit deeper later in the show. It is Belle Vernon at Penn-Trafford. And so we transition to the Warriors, and it's hard to believe that they got their first victory after dropping their first 2 games of the season, but they certainly had to work for it against Woodland Hills as PT claimed a victory, but it came down to the wire, 28-26 over the Wolverines. That's a really good Woodland Hills team with some explosive players like Scoop Smith, but PT had their own explosive player in Tasso Whipple. And I think they needed just someone to step up in a big way to get off the schneid, and he certainly came through.
Yeah, it was so important. And I said last week that, I wasn't predicting that Penn-Trafford was going to start the season 0-4, but I said that it was a possibility, after starting 0-2, going up against a really good Woodland Hills team that, had some momentum coming in after beating Gateway. And then, of course, they have Belle Vernon this week, the defending state champs. We know what they're all about. That was certainly a real danger for them, even though they're all non-conference games. And I said going into the game against Woodland Hills, they don't necessarily need to win it, but they got to show some good stuff, right? They got to get the offense going. And that's exactly what they did with Tasso Whipple. Man, he was absolutely terrific. His best game as a Penn-Trafford Warrior. He's only a junior. And going into this game, I think Penn-Trafford felt like it was maybe a must win, or again, at least be able to play well. And they certainly did so. Now, did Woodland Hills make some noise at the end of the game? I'm sure John Ruane would have liked to win that game a little more comfortably, because Woodland Hills actually had the football, a chance to win it, but they fumbled it on a bad exchange. So who knows if they don't have that bad exchange? Maybe we're talking about a Penn-Trafford loss, kind of squandering the game away. So maybe they need some help in maybe learning how to win, putting games away a little bit better with some new faces this year. But hey, a win is a win. They're able to do it. And Sean, I thought it was important, again, to get the offense going, the running game going, take control of the game early. And not only Tasso Whipple, but we saw Ben Grabowski get a lot of snaps as well. And he played really well, too, for Penn-Trafford in the game. We saw him play baseball over the summer, and the coaches were saying how good of a athlete that he is. And we saw that, on the football side of it. And I think he's going to continue to get a lot of snaps.
And I believe it was Stu Fowl who came up with that late fumble recovery to seal the victory at the Wolverina. Not an easy place to win a game, but for Penn-Trafford, again, a big win and some signs of life from the offense. And maybe this is what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to maybe rely on the running game first and foremost. And you think back to a couple years ago, that's the type of team they were. They got up to kind of a rocky start in their championship winning season, with Carter Green having some mistakes throwing the football. And I think as the season went along, they said, you know what? He has to throw every now and then and make some key throws. But by and large, we're going to have he and Yakimelli running the football. And maybe that's what ends up happening in terms of the offense this year. But it does seem like they're maybe starting to find some answers.
Yeah, I think so. And defensively, the first couple of weeks, I thought they played really well. In this game, you go up against a guy like Scoop Smith. I know he put up some big numbers against Penn-Trafford. He's going to put up some big numbers against everybody. So that may be one of the best athletes they go up against all season long. So, the defense
until this week.
Well, that's true. What am I saying? Yeah, right. I should say through the first 3 weeks, it's the best offensive player they go up against. But they're going to have certainly a challenge going up against that Belle Vernon offense too. It'll be a challenge for their defense. But again, defensively, I think they're okay. It was offensively that I think the concern was, because they only had scored 7 points with the first couple of games against some pretty good teams too. Another challenge coming up for PT on Friday night.
What's the saying that the victors write history, something along those lines? Usually,
I don't know, I'll have to Google it.
Yeah, that's fine. Usually we talk about the team who wins as one of the biggest stories for our takeaways. I actually think Derry area in a loss to Southmoreland has to be one of the biggest stories. And you can also look at it from the Southmoreland perspective. And obviously, we cover both of those teams. So we'll get both sides. Southmoreland escapes with a 24-21 victory over the Trojans, a game in which Derry area led relatively late into the contest. There was a game-winning field goal for the Scotties. I cannot believe how far the Trojans have come in the span of 2 weeks. And on the other side, we talked so much about how great Southmoreland looked. Maybe a little bit of a wake-up call for them. I'm not saying that they were taking Derry lightly, but it was much closer than certainly I anticipated.
I think everybody. I mean, you look at Southmoreland again. I mean, we were singing their praises, and they still obviously could finish, in second place in that conference behind Belle Vernon. I mean, it's all still out in front of them. But playing at home against a Derry team that lost pretty convincingly to Latrobe in the first game of the year, and beat Greensburg-Salem, but almost let that one go as well. With Craigie and all the weapons that Southmoreland has, you were thinking that, they had the opportunity to really blow that game up, and Derry didn't let it happen. You give them a ton of credit for that. Obviously, Ahmad Ward had another monster game, and he has been the absolute workhorse for the Trojans. Cross your fingers that Ahmad, again, continues to stay healthy, because he's been putting up some big numbers, again, carrying the football for over 30 times against Southmoreland. And Sean, Derry had a chance. They had 4th down and 2 late in the game at the Scotties 12-yard line. If they get a first down there and end up scoring a touchdown, that might be all she wrote. I mean, that's how close it was for them winning the game. But you give credit. I think it was Ethan Shawley and Ty Keffer that came up with a big tackle for Southmoreland on Ahmad to not allow Derry to win the game. And then, of course, Southmoreland comes down and gets the field goal to win it. So just really a great football game. We weren't sure if that was going to happen, but Derry showed up, and now they go up against a rival in York to open section or conference play, and a team that they lost to last year on the mountain. So that's certainly a game that Derry, I think, wants to have. But I think, again, the difference for them has been Ahmad Ward, that offensive line. And, you give credit to the defense, too, because Craig got his yards, but he didn't kill them, in the game. They were certainly right in it. And another thing, too, Sean, long drives can do that, right? You keep Craig off the field offensively. I think Derry had like a 90-yard drive in that game. So you have time of possession. That's a way to keep that Southmoreland offense off the field.
Craig still went for well over 100 yards, but most of it came on 2 long touchdown runs. So he burned him a couple of times, but he wasn't consistently just pounding 5-10 yards at a time. The other thing is, the first word that comes to mind for me is belief, because I think the Trojans now believe that they can win games, or at least play competitively for the entire game against better and larger opponents. Because keep in mind, Southmoreland is a 3A school. Derry's now in 2A. So they're not the only team that seemingly is making a big turnaround. Seton LaSalle went from really bad to really good. Knock doing the same. It happens, but it's so amazing to see something like a 20-game losing streak snapped, and then they nearly pull off an absolute stunner just a week later. So I think good things are on the horizon for the Trojans. And if you're Tim Bukowski, you say, hey, we got to be better, but it's good to try to find room for improvement after a victory. And they're very happy that they've got a kicker like Kaler who can finish games off, because we know how important field goal kickers are. We've already seen it a few times with the Jayhawks, with games that came down to the wire. Having a good field goal kicker could make all the difference.
And it made the difference in this game as well. I mean, again, Derry had that 4th down and 2, didn't make it, but, Jake Kaler gets 2 field goals down the stretch and they win by 3 points. So, he did make the difference. And when we were at Southmoreland's training camp, to be honest with you, he wasn't kicking real well that day.
You made him nervous, I think, with the camera.
I think we did. We were screaming to try to distract him. That's what Tim told us to do. But he was really excited about him, singing his praises, and obviously he came through with those field goals of 25 and 32 yards, and Southmoreland's happy to have him.
Well, we mentioned Penn-Trafford gets off the snide. The Trojans recently snapping their long losing streak. How about win number 1 for Ty George at Greensburg-Salem?
Yeah, congrats, Ty.
Yeah, a couple of rough weeks to start the season for the Golden Lions, but they were able to win pretty decisively, 34-7 against Ligonier Valley. And we've said before, Ligonier Valley lost so much. They really don't have many key returners back, so they have players who are growing up. And I think Greensburg-Salem's sort of in the same boat, but the benefit for the Golden Lions is they got their quarterback back in Peyton Chismar, who, with a really weird quirk, was not able to play the first 2 weeks because of suspension. He's back, and it does seem like that's really going to give them quite a boost. And so if nothing else, a night for Ty George to remember. And I know he and probably just about every head coach says it's not as important for me as it is for these players to get, for many of them, their first varsity win.
Yeah, Ty's a great dude, so obviously he's going to deflect it onto the players. And I always say this, whether that first win comes in week 2 or week 5, the players put in a lot of work in the offseason and in the preseason and during the season to win football games. And obviously nice to see Greensburg-Salem get that victory. Ligonier Valley, we know what type of program they have, and even after moving into the WPIAL, they certainly been very respectable with what they have done under Roger Beitel. Again, only one senior, a lot of underclassmen, a tough way, to lose that game to Greensburg-Salem. But again, looking at Chismar, obviously he made a difference. I think coming back and playing a kid that can run the football and can throw the football, and Kai Bruno, he played well the first couple of weeks, and he continued to do his.
I was really impressed by him defensively early in the season. I know you said he delivered some big time hits in that game against Hempfield area.
Yeah, he did. And again, he took a couple of hits in that game too. So obviously, you need him to kind of stay healthy. But Chismar coming back refreshed, and I'm sure he comes back with a little bit of a, I don't want to say chip on his shoulder, but maybe an extra focus. So, like, kind of looking at himself and saying, man, and I don't know the whole story of exactly what happened. You talk to some of their assistant coaches, and they tell you one thing or another. But I'm sure he felt pretty poorly standing on the sideline, saying, I can't even help my team, especially after going through training camp and everything, practicing and continuing to work hard. And so I'm sure he was just raring and ready to go, during kickoff, when that ball was kicked off at Offutt Field on Friday. And he did a nice job. And we'll see how much of a difference he will make for Greensburg-Salem going forward.
Yeah, it's the feeling of trying to make up for lost time, I think, with Chismar. And on the other side, I do want to note, Ligonier Valley came to the WPIAL in 2020, and it was kind of a weird year for them because they had such great teams the previous years in District 6. And then just about everyone graduated. In 2020, they almost started from scratch, but they had a lot of really promising sophomores and some juniors on that team. Almost no seniors. I think they had one senior on the roster. So Roger Beitel's been through this, and they actually finished with a winning record. Now, they didn't make the playoffs because that was a smaller playoff field with COVID, but they figured out a way to make it work. I don't know if they're going to finish with a winning record this year, but one thing I do know is Roger Beitel will get the team playing better at the end of the season than what it is at the start of the season, because those players are going to grow up.
Yeah, it's just kind of strange. As you say that, I was having a little bit of deja vu. I thought, a couple of years ago, I think Ligonier only had one senior. Now we're kind of back to that, just how the classes, I guess, have worked out at Ligonier. But yeah, you're looking for improvement, from week 0 to week 9, of the season. You're hoping to obviously get into the playoffs if you can, clinch a playoff spot. I don't know if Ligonier will do that this year or not, but you're just looking for the kids to develop, continue to improve, and hopefully you can get into the playoffs. Maybe you get a winning record. If at the very least you're improved and ready to go for next year.
Absolutely. Well, those are the big stories from week 2 of the WPIAL football season across Westmoreland County. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll run down the rest of the scores from our county teams in week 2. We'll also look at the top performers. And a little bit later on, we will have the always popular plays of the week, interviews with Matt Humbert and Tasso Whipple, and a look ahead with the week 3 preview. That's as we continue to roll along right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Play It Again Sports in Greensburg is your locally owned and operated sporting goods store. We set ourselves apart by offering a wide variety of both new and used equipment at competitive prices. Located in the Greengate East Plaza, below Walmart, Play It Again Sports' knowledgeable staff will help you and your family prepare for every athletic season. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or trade, we are here as your one-stop shop. At Play It Again Sports in Greensburg, everybody plays.
Nothing performs like a Volkswagen, and nobody does Volkswagen like Sendell VW in Greensburg. Taos, Tiguan, Atlas, Jetta, and more. Send LVW has tons of new inventory on the lot, with more arriving daily. Visit our showroom today or check out our easy-to-use Stop, Shop, and Roll online buying feature. Get your best deal on a great selection of new Volkswagen models at Send LVW, Route 30 in Greensburg. SendLVW.com. We would love to meet you.
And we welcome you back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron each and every Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here on WSN. We're going to hear from Matt Humbert and Tasso Whipple, our interviews, a little bit later on. We'll also have the plays of the week and a look ahead to the Week 3 schedule. But let's wrap up Week 2 real quickly, Flick, with the rest of the scores from around Westmoreland County. And, of course, you can go back and watch or listen to many of these games that we had broadcasts of, including Belle Vernon area winning in a thriller, as we mentioned, against McKeesport in overtime, 21-14. Their head coach, we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. Greater Latrobe, 27-7, impressive victory against Hempfield area. And so I had the broadcast of that one, and it was the Tash brothers, primarily Alex Tash, who was just unbelievable. And when I talk to Ron Brady every week, he just raves about this kid. A junior linebacker who also had 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, multiple sacks, tackles for loss. He's a special player, and he thinks sooner rather than later we'll have a ton of Power 5 offers. And this Wildcats team, that's a big bounce back after that heartbreaker just a week prior against Franklin Regional.
Yeah, those offers are going to come rolling in for him, and it, you know, when you talk about teams, everybody always wants to focus on the offensive side, and Tash obviously has some, you know, good things to do over there, but it's his defense. He is an excellent linebacker, a kid that just doesn't sleep on that side of the ball, and you can't sleep on him because he is so good. You always have to be aware of where he is on the field offensively, you know, when you're going up against him. So just a terrific football player, and then can do it on both sides. And again, Sean, you get another year out of him next year.
Yeah, he can rush like a defensive end. He can cover like a player in the secondary. He's a darn good one for Greater Latrobe. You can go back and watch that victory against the Hempfield area Spartans. Also, even more impressive, they were able to win comfortably without Jaton Williams having a single touch on offense. That speaks to some of the other depth that they have on the offensive side of the football. We also mentioned Southmoreland sneaking out a victory against Derry area 24-21. You can go back and watch that one for the Scotties and the Trojans. Franklin Regional, a statement victory, 38-0 over previously undefeated Connellsville area. A big-time performance for the Panthers. And I know that their defense really came to play because Connellsville had given some teams problems. So Franklin Regional, you know, I thought maybe they would take a slight step back here in 2023 after they had such a great year last year. And then you look at, they struggled against Thomas Jefferson. There's no denying that, but they bounced back with that win against Greater Latrobe, and now they blow out Connellsville. So I think Coach Getze has his team right where he wants them to be at this point.
Yeah, that game against TJ, I think it's more of how good of a team Thomas Jefferson is than how poor Franklin Regional is or anything like that. You look at Bruce Giles coming in after rushing for 200 yards against Hempfield. He only rushed for 55 against Franklin Regional. They did a terrific job against him, and obviously they put up their points on the board on the offensive side, and Kyle Dupill again with another nice game for Franklin Regional.
Yeah, the linebackers for the Panthers, Owen Sinclair and then Austin Kearns, have been terrific. They've been racking up the tackles, obviously not giving up any points in securing that shutout. Jeanette gets another win, 31-20 over Jefferson Morgan. You can go back and listen to that one as well. And so Penn-Trafford, we talked about before, they get their first win of the season, 28-26, knocking off the Woodland Hills Wolverines at the Wolverina. How about the Norway Knights also getting their first victory? And it's not his first victory as a high school football head coach, but the first one at Norwin for Mike Brown. So congrats to him.
Congrats,
as
Mike.
They knock off Fox Chapel 33-18. That's got to feel good for the Norway Knights. Very competitive against Upper St. Clair to start the season. Then they had a tough go against Penn Hills, but able to right the ship against Fox Chapel. Now, can they take the next step? Because they beat the Foxes last year. That was their only win in 2022. I would imagine that the Knights might have another win or several wins on the horizon this season.
And this is a massive game, and we'll preview it, Sean, you know, the game against Plum. I just wanted to mention it was neat to see that Jake Knight stepped up. We saw Jackson Pons. We know what he can do as a receiver, but Jake Knight, 4 catches, 165 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that win against Fox Chapel. That was great to see, I'm sure, for Mike Brown.
Yeah, and when you hear that, that means that the quarterback's doing a good job as well. And Tristan Tavares, a guy that was fighting for playing time last year, but I think that experience as a freshman paid off. He threw for, as we'll hear a little bit later, almost 300 yards in the victory. So he is doing a really nice job orchestrating that offense. Kiski area gets a victory in thrilling fashion, 28-24 against Laurel Highlands. The Cavaliers with a late score. The biggest story from that game, a scary one, as Antoine Black, the great player for the Mustangs, was carted off and then, I believe, taken ultimately by life flight to a hospital. The word was as of the next day he was doing better, but man, that is happening way too often, unfortunately. Hope that he's okay and then maybe able to come back. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to play this season or not, but very scary. And of course, when you win a game like that, you're excited, but you can't celebrate when you see something like that, even against the opposition. So Cavs, I'm sure afterwards were able to, enjoy the victory to some extent, but certainly you hate to see a game ever end like that with an injury to the Laurel Highlands star. Greensburg-Salem, as we mentioned, 34-7 over Ligonier Valley. Mount Pleasant gets a victory against McGuffey, 26-21 in favor of the Vikings as they knock off their old head coach, Ed Dalton, in the process. The Borough Buccaneers win the Battle of the Bypass over the Valley Vikings, 30-8. My friend who is a Borough grad is very happy about that. He said jokingly that all the people from New Kensington will have to drive through Leechburg now. They won't be allowed to take the bypass for the next year.
Uh-oh.
So bragging rights go to the Buccaneers and Coach Lyotta. I know that's always a big-time opportunity for them in that rivalry matchup. Yacht Cougars trying to build some momentum heading into their conference opener as they knock off Charleroi 20-14 in the Battle of the Cougars. How about Greensburg Central Catholic? We have seen them do this a few times in recent years. Just explode offensively. 48 points against West Green in a high-scoring affair, 48-30. They knock off the Pioneers, and we know they've got tremendous skill position guys each and every week. You're going to hear Tyree Turner. You're going to hear Samir Crosby. Those two guys have been special throughout their entire careers with the Centurions. Monessen gets a victory over Frazier, 48-19. And then on the college side, Seton Hill gets a big victory at home, the home opener for the Griffins, 28-23 against Shippensburg. You can go back and watch that one. A lot of good stuff that we'll talk about a little bit later. I have a feeling they might appear in plays of the week as well. Was not as enjoyable of an outcome for St. Vincent, however. The Bearcats blanked 38-0 against Carnegie Mellon. That'll do it for the week 2 scores. Let's look at the top performers, the top passer, rusher, and receiver from across the entire WPIAL, as well as the local standouts in Westmoreland County. Top passer, he plays for Pittsburgh Central Catholic. He lives in Westmoreland County. It's Peyton Wayner of Central Catholic, as we mentioned. 17 of 20 for 298 yards and a big-time performance for the Vikings. Amongst Westmoreland County players, Tristan Tavares, as we mentioned, for the Knights, 10 of 17 for 270 yards. Tyree Turner of Greensburg Central Catholic, 186 yards. Carson Heinley for the Kiski area Cavaliers in their victory threw for 185. Mason Simmons, 144 for Valley. And Mason Beeman for the Derry area Trojans threw for 128 yards. The top rusher in the WPIAL is Eric Doru of South Park, 253 yards on the ground for him. Tasso Whipple went over 200 as well, 215 for the Penn-Trafford standout. Carson Heinley of Kiski area, 187. Brady Smith of Greensburg-Salem, 164. Ahmad Ward of the Derry area Trojans, 146. And Davon Burke of Monessen, 139. And then the top receiver, Colton Fedrizzi of Shenango, 9 receptions, 167 yards. And not far behind at all was Jake Knight of the Norway Knights, 4 catches, 165 yards.
And Sean, let's not gloss over Carson Heinley. What a game he had. Now, I know he's one of our players of the week, one of our nominees, but my gosh, rolled up a ton of rushing yards and passing yards. Great job by him.
when he became their starter last year, he instantly gave some juice to that offense. And I know that he has done some really, really good work there, taking over for the Cavaliers, and this week leading them to a victory. That'll do it for our recap of week 2, but you got to stick around because when we come back, it is the always popular plays of the week. And a little bit later on, we'll hear from Matt Humbert, the head coach of Belle Vernon, and Tasso Whipple of Penn-Trafford, who was voted our player of the week. We'll also look ahead to the week 3 preview. Don't go anywhere because we're going to continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Frazier. I recently went back to school to earn my bachelor's degree in behavioral health from Seton Hill University. I work full-time with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm also married with young children, so I was looking for a program that offered both flexibility and a personal touch. The educators at Seton Hill really want you to reach your highest potential and will work with you so you can succeed.
Get to Mike Hamlin Hyundai for huge summer savings. Save big with 0% financing on new Hyundai Tucsons and Santa Fe's. Or receive up to $7,500 in special lease bonus cash. All vehicles are backed by the Mike Hamlin Advantage oil changes for life.
Excella Health and Butler Health System are now Independence Health System. Expert care here.
We roll along here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron each and every Wednesday on the Westmoreland Sports Network. 7 o'clock your time to tune in for the best coverage of Westmoreland County High School football. I am Sean, joined by Dan, of course. And Dan, are you ready?
Am I ready for what, Sean?
Are you ready for plays of the week?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it then. We'll start with Belle Vernon area as the Leopards edged McKeesport in overtime, but the game likely would not have made it to overtime if the Leopards didn't have a goal line stand in the fourth quarter. It was Tanner Moody who delivered the game-saving play for BVA, as called by Dave Franzak and John Bainbridge.
Ooh.
Well, he only has to go 1 yard here. We'll see.
Handoff goes to Boyd. He's undercut again. It's Moody.
2 great plays in a row by Moody.
Turn it over. Belle Vernon makes a huge stand.
Now they got first at 99.5. But watch Moody here. Undercuts it. Beautiful play. If he doesn't make the play, he walks into the end zone.
Let's also give credit there to Braden Lux. Comes in and makes sure that Boyd can't reach any further. Huge defensive stand for the Leopards.
Sean, everybody on the Leopards side was in a good mood after that play. That was slick, I know. Terrific play by him. Again, I mentioned him earlier in the broadcast. Just an unsung hero on the defensive side of the ball, finishing with 12 tackles. And, man, what a great job by the Belle Vernon defense.
Yeah, Leopards getting it done. Remember, their defense was absolutely incredible all throughout last season in their run to a state title. We continue plays of the week with Southmoreland, and it was Dejon Craigett who continued his prolific season for the Scotties on Friday, ripping off a pair of long touchdown runs, the second of which put his team in the lead in the third quarter, with John Flickinger and Bob Lisinski on the call.
His son Justin with a nice game last week for Waynesburg. Justin Huss, a good game for W&J. A lot of Trojans in the news. As Craigett finds room, and there is his explosiveness, and Craigett is gone. They gave him room, and that's all he needs. 2 long runs all night, both touchdowns, this time from 48 yards. And just like that, the Scotties have retaken the lead, and there is the speed and breakaway of number 5.
Yeah, he found the opening there, made a nice cut there, and once he got out in the open field, he could just outrun everybody.
Yeah, if you want to stop that kid, Sean, you have to bottle him up at the line of scrimmage because he's so hard to catch up to. I mean, once he gets by the the linebackers and then the safeties and the corners, it's just so hard to catch up to him. You have to take a perfect angle, and you got to have some speed to get him, or he's going to be gone, and that's exactly what we saw Dejon do. Now, again, the Derry defense did a pretty good job against him, albeit a couple of big busted plays. But, again, when he has that room, just like we heard Johnny Boy say there, it's going to be 6.
Yeah, he can certainly make a house call in the blink of an eye. Well, we'll continue and stay in that same game on the Derry area side. It was a back-and-forth game, and the Trojans regained the lead later in that third quarter. It was Derry head coach Mike O'Run who went into his bag of tricks, and Damari Robinson made the play work, with John and Bob providing the commentary.
Big 3rd and 7 for the Trojans. They have it at the 18-yard line. Robinson in the slot to the right. It's going to be Ward, a little trickery. Robinson, if he gets a block, he has it. He turns the corner. He heads to the end zone, and he is in for a Trojan touchdown. Damari Robinson on the end around.
And a nice block there by Beeman to put Robinson in the end zone, John.
They got the timeout right before the snap. They went to the sideline, and Coach Milant, the Wizard, drew up a play, and it worked to perfection. And you're right, Bemo, the big block, and Damari did the rest, and the Trojans back on top.
Really nicely designed play there by the Derry offensive coaching staff. And you have to remember, too, that Joe Milan came back last year. He was Tim Sweeney's offensive coordinator, did not coach under Coach Skilling, comes back last year. So, he has his stamp all over that play as well. Obviously, we know how great success the Derry offense had a few years ago. So really good call there. And Mason Beeman, who probably should be like playing tight end or something, he kind of got thrust in the quarterback position with, Blake Revore no longer being on the team. He throws that block. It's no surprise because he's a big dude. He throws that block out there to Spring Robinson, and the Trojans get a touchdown.
Yeah, you hold your breath for a split second when a quarterback goes out to block, but like you said, a guy like Beeman, he's got the build for it. Certainly you have faith that he can clear some space for Robinson, and he was able to do the rest. We'll continue plays of the week with Greater Latrobe, and it was John Wetzel who enjoyed a lot of success throwing the football this season, but it was his running ability that it was elite as well on Friday night. And he showed the full package on a special run to put the Wildcats ahead of Penfield area 20-0 in the third quarter, with myself and Mark Katarski on the call.
He's not a defensive back, although he's playing like one. He had 91 tackles, 6 sacks, and an interception last year. And I think it's safe to say that he's potentially going to be even better this year defensively as Wetzel. Look at his run as he stays on his feet, shows the burners, and he will get in on a 38-yard spectacular touchdown.
Kind of felt like they were wearing him down that way throughout the first half. And then Wetzel's ability to just break through a few arm tackles proved too much for the Spartans. Big touchdown there for Latrobe, really getting a commanding lead now with the score.
He's a quarterback, but he looked a little bit more like a hard-hitting safety, which he also doubles as on that run.
Yeah, just a tremendous run by Johnny Wetzel, and we see it, the fact that he can be that dual-threat quarterback each and every game where he can kill you with his feet. First game or first play of the season, he connects with Jaton Williams against Derry, so he can do it with his arm as well. Just a great run there. Too many missed tackles for Hempfield, which has been a bugaboo over the years for them. And how about the little cameo there by Latrobe Athletic Director Zach Hyde? He's wearing that polo, man, flexing those muscles. So I'm trying to embarrass him as much as possible there. Give a little shout out to Ziggy with the little cameo.
I was going to say Zach Hyde. I'd never heard you refer to him as Zach. I always hear Ziggy when you're talking about the AD for Greater Latrobe and a former Seton Hill baseball standout as well. Well, we'll continue plays of the week with Franklin Regional as the Panthers enjoyed a dominant first half against Connellsville area, and it was quarterback Chase Lemke who was a big part of that success, as his slick play put the Panthers in complete control with the one and only Jonathan Whaley calling the action.
They have it 1st and 10 at the 46-yard line. Middle of the field, low snap. Lemke fakes the pass. He's going to run it through the line of scrimmage to the left side. He's down to the 30. He's coming down to the 20. 10, 5, touchdown. 46-yard touchdown run. Well executed by Lemke, and he takes it to the house himself from 46 yards away. And the Panthers are pouring it on here in the first half against the Falcons. Chase Lemke, that was sweet. And I'm sure you enjoy watching that. How he faked, he's going to pass it to the right, kept it, ran around that left side. And once he got clear of the line of scrimmage, he showed a nice ability to run away from some Falcons there for that touchdown.
I think that's a game where Chase Lemke can continue to get his feet wet. We saw some really good things out of him the week before in that game against Greater Latrobe, new starter, and I think he just keeps getting better week after week as a dual threat guy.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap up Plays of the Week with a look collegiately at Seton Hill University. And it was Hayden Teska who began the season as the number 3 quarterback, but just 2 games in, he looks like the answer at the position for the Griffins. His long connection with Ethan Fame came just seconds before the first halftime expired, giving the Griffins a lead heading into the locker room, with myself and Roger Downs detailing the play.
Teska. That's a good pass to Fame, and he stays on his feet. Is he going to take it the distance? They're after it. They won't catch him. 64-yard touchdown.
Ethan Fame, the redshirt junior out of Rochester, New York. Griffins will go for 1.
Now put him in the Hall of Fame after that. Fame's first collegiate touchdown comes in spectacular fashion. And I go back to the fact that the clock was stopped because of that injury.
Yes. Seton Hill down to its 3rd string quarterback. And hey, man, we saw Hayden Teska, Sean, in high school lighting up the scoreboard, throwing those deep balls. And Cody Rubrecht, his receiver from Greensburg-Salem, is also on the Seton Hill team. We didn't actually see them hook up very much in the game, maybe not at all. But just a great throw right there, a quick strike, giving some juice to the Griffins, and obviously they end up winning the game. But he did a tremendous job coming in and not necessarily having the highest completion percentage, but being able to make the passes that he threw really count.
Yeah, and so you talk about a couple of former Greensburg-Salem players. Ryan Thomas is the starting tight end. And how about one of the assistant coaches on staff now for Dan Day is the legend Dave Kiefer.
Yeah, and I give all the credit to that win to him, of course.
Well, he likes to hear that, I'm sure, but I think he might kind of give some of the credit to the players as well.
Pretty cool stuff, by the way, for Greensburg-Salem. You know, he comes in on his former high school field and gets a victory, and I would imagine he'll get the start this week against East Stroud.
Absolutely. Good stuff from the Griffins. That'll do it for Plays of the Week. When we come back, we will have an interview with Matt Humbert, the head coach of the Belle Vernon area Leopards, after his team scored a thrilling victory against McKeesport, and just a little bit before they play another stiff competition in the form of the Penn-Trafford Warriors. That's as we continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
That's the power of
Coach, building a championship team, I know for you, it's all about the details. The same goes with the Bowsers.
No doubt about it. I mean, it's the tiny little details every single day, not forgetting about it the next day, and maybe doing it the following day. I mean, I think details are everything.
As Coach says, get your eyes right on the power of Bowser.
The Bowser family is proud to have Coach Narduzzi as part of our team.
D'Annunzio's Italian Restaurants is open 7 days a week at all 3 of our locations, Jeanette, Monroeville, and Latrobe. We invite you to join us for our specials. Monday, the special is spaghetti. Tuesday, it's raviolis. Wednesday, it's lasagna. And Thursday, it's chicken parmesan or chicken romano. Be sure to try our drink specials and our fabulous desserts. And remember, we also have takeout available at all 3 locations.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. Sean Meyers now joined by Matt Humbert, the head coach of the Belle Vernon area Leopards. And Matt, first off, I know that you had a thrilling victory against McKeesport last week, a game that went to overtime, got a lot of attention, maybe the best game in across the entire WPIAL. To get the win this time after falling short against the Tigers last year, how exciting was that for you and for the entire team?
It was gratifying for sure. And, you know, there's a lot of storylines at play with that. I think the loss last year was really evident. And I think, you know, our performance against McKeesport, you know, 2 out of the past 3 years has been very successful. So I feel that, the kids and probably the coaches were a little more motivated than ever to go out there and battle McKeesport. And that's always a game that requires so much focus and attention because of what they do and their style. And then you mix in their physicalness. It's just a very tough football game to prepare for. It's a stressful week. So I think the gratification is just being able to get the win from a very stressful situation and a very stressful 6 days.
And so you get the win in overtime. And of course, people look, well, how did it end? Braden Laux gets a touchdown for your team, and then you get the stop on 4th down. But to even get to overtime, you needed a goal line stand in the 4th quarter. What stood out about that performance of your defense in particular on that sequence?
Well, I think it's one of those things where I don't know if one thing necessarily stood out. I don't think that when you sit down and you're going through it in real time or you recap it post time, I don't really think there's something that stands out. I think it's just more of, it's kind of a comfort level. When we get in that situation, we don't really blink. And McKeesport's tough. We felt stout against them, but the problem is you could be stout against them 2 out of 3 snaps. That third one, they can hit for 10, if not 20, 30 yards. So, going into overtime, it's one of those games where it kind of worked out well because, the overtime situation period that we had on Thursday in a practice prep, those were the plays that we obviously went with, and they worked obviously for us. And we were trying to, get Quentin out on the perimeter. We were trying to spread them out, and Braden had the option that he could either pitch the ball to the perimeter or he could run it himself. So he made 2 wise decisions by calling his number both times. And then again, defensively, we felt like, we could be stout in terms of stopping them. However, they can sting you. So I think confidence and comfort kind of were at the forefront because we've been there. This isn't anything new for us.
Yeah, certainly. I think back to the state championship game and needing a goal line stand in that game to preserve the victory. I know Alonzo Wade sort of had a breakout performance, and you credited him afterwards, thought it was sort of a star in the making type performance. But that happens over the course of a long time. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. What have you seen from him that led him to have that breakout moment?
In terms of Anthony Cruz?
Oh, my mistake. Yes, Anthony Cruz.
Okay. So Anthony, he was a guy that last year, he was in the mix from day one, but never really kind of did anything to separate himself. And then an injury happened, I want to say about week 6 or week 5, and that propelled him into a role, and he kind of took the bull by the horns and ran with it. Wasn't perfect, had a little hiccups here and there, but always battled back, always fought strong. I think one of the things, he returned a kick in the Central Martinsburg game for 6 points, a kick return, and that kind of really showed like this kid has some game speed. You see the speed in practice, but sometimes kids have a different level when it comes to a Friday night. And so we saw that. And then really the thing that kind of popped to me was his 7-on-7 resume in the month of April. We started our 7-on-7 stuff a little earlier than usual. We had 3 in April, and the way he performed and competed, I kind of knew, he's going to be a guy. So everything's trended in the right direction for him. It's just a matter of fitting him in where we fit him in, and trying to keep defenses balanced by Quentin on one side and Cruz on the other, and Jetico and Braden in the backfield. So it's a nice recipe, and we're hoping just to continue getting better at it.
And I'm sure people look at the performance that Quentin Martin had in AC, not a ton of yards in terms of his performance, but I know you said going back to the state semifinals game last year, if that's what the defense dictates, then you're willing to go to other guys because you have faith in them, including guys, of course, like Cruz. But is there a difficult balance between we don't want to force something to him, but by the same token, we do want to see, even if the defense is trying to slow him down, he's the most talented player in the field, can he still break one?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the problem really was our offensive lack of productivity. I don't think it was really a Quentin thing. I mean, when Quentin got the ball in his hands, he did well with it, especially with some of our expansion screens and things of that nature. And, he caught that vertical down going into the end zone opposite the scoreboard side, and that 1 foot was out. And that was kind of a questionable visual if he was actually in or not. So if he catches that, then everything's good in that realm. So I don't necessarily think it wasn't that he wasn't productive on Friday. I just think that offensively we kind of sputtered and never really were able to get to a rhythm. the second quarter and the third quarter, we had 5 penalties, and our goal was always to win the penalty battle, and we didn't. So I think we kind of sputtered, and we were in long situations. A few drives, 3 drives, we were in second and 20 plus. So I just think that it was one of those things where we were never comfortable enough, and we were behind the sticks, that we weren't able to really get in a mode of getting him running downhill and doing things of that nature. So we're hoping this week we kind of get back to normal, and we're hoping that we kind of replicate the first and second drive that we had versus McKeesport in terms of, execution and precision, because we kind of got a little sloppy in the second and third quarter.
And in transitioning to looking ahead at Penn-Trafford, you mentioned McKeesport, incredibly physical. I think that's usually a staple of Penn-Trafford. Everyone knows they have some massive players in the trenches. And then Thomas Jefferson, the first thing you think of is physicality. I know that you've wanted to test your team with a very rigorous non-conference, but is there also a concern that you're playing such physical teams that it could also wear down some of your players for the conference season that's to come?
It doesn't, because, we feel that, our goal is always to wear down teams in the fourth quarter. And, I had a couple linemen come over to me in the fourth, and they said, "Coach, they're getting tired. They're getting tired." And that's obviously what we want. It's like yesterday, we beat McKeesport in a great victory, back against the wall, goal line, overtime situation. And, we were brutal on the kids yesterday. I mean, we ran them a lot and things of that nature. I mean, that's part of the game. Your goal and your game plan and your strategy is to be able to produce in the fourth quarter and not get tired and not get exhausted. So, I think these are all games that really challenge and test that early on. And I think that, if you can come away with what you're supposed to, it just makes you tougher and makes you stronger. So the physical component is something that we look for. We don't necessarily kind of calculate the risk involved in it. So to answer your question, we think the physical games actually help in the long run, opposed to, being a negative factor.
Penn-Trafford certainly brings that, the opposition for this week. And I know that they got off to an uncharacteristically rough start, dropping their first 2 games, but they had a big bounce back against Woodland Hills. And certainly Tasso Whipple was a big part of that, over 200 yards rushing. When you look at them through 3 games, what do you see?
I see a characteristic Penn-Trafford Warrior football team. Very well coached, very disciplined, an extremely well-run program from an efficiency standpoint, big, physical, and kids that are hard-nosed. I mean, I think that's kind of the brand that Penn-Trafford has had, and I think that that's something that is evident on film. So the physical play is definitely there, and I think us playing McKeesport benefits us in the regards that we know what that physicality is like, and it's not that we are benign to it, but you get to just see another team that has that same type of brand, and there's no rest. So the kids need to be on their toes, and the kids need to get ready for a slugfest, because it should be a good one.
I remember back to last year's game, low scoring, tightly contested. A late turnover proved the difference in allowing Penn-Trafford to get that victory. Do you think back to that game and see that this year's game could be a similar style of play?
Yeah, I think there's similarities for sure, and I think there's differences. I think one thing is, even with the success we had last year, I think McKeesport and Penn-Trafford are probably talked about more than Avonworth and Newman Goretti, and I think that's just the way the football is, right? The wins kind of stick with, or the losses kind of stick with you a little bit more than the wins. So, we're not going to put the cart before the horse. We know we got an all-day sandwich coming up Friday, but we're eager to get back and try to get that bad taste out of our mouth, and we're going to have to climb a mountain to get that bad taste out of our mouth. But yeah, they're talented. Got a lot of kids. They are very characteristic to what they've been in the past, and it'll be a big challenge for us Friday night. But I'd like to think that we don't get the credit for our physicality as well. I think sometimes when you look at us, especially our linebacking core inside, we're lean, we're not big, but those kids are tough as nails. I mean, look at a kid like Moody. I mean, Moody has 20 plus tackles already after 2 games, and he's a $150, $160, and he's just quick and fast. So, I think that people would agree that we're a physical style football team. We're just not the biggest bodies that are embracing that physicality.
Biggest keys to victory against Penn-Trafford?
Don't turn over the ball. And I know that's cliche, but again, I mean, it can kind of really be translatable. And we felt like last year that was our demise. I also think that a key for us is we can't allow Penn-Trafford to have drives. I mean, there's times last year where they were just cranking out drives. I remember the one time that they had a 4th and 3 on their 28, and they went for it. It proved to be beneficial because they were able to get 5 yards for a first down. So we defensively, we can't allow them to extend the drive on 4th downs, and they did that a few times last year. And offensively, we got to be productive. We got to play without penalties and mistakes, and we got to take the ball and methodically drive it. And I think we started off that way last week, and we just didn't really end up that way last week. So we have to win the battle with the possession on offense, and defensively, we can't, allow them to be able to progress the downs past 4th.
Lastly, I know I asked you this before the season. You're a couple weeks in now. As the defending WPIAL and state champions, there's obviously a lot more pressure. There's even bigger target. Penn-Trafford went to this last year after they won the state title in 2021. How have the players so far responded to it, and is it something that they're embracing?
It's just one of those things where it's a daily mission for me to get them to forget it. You can't live in the past. And I think there's so many good examples out there and literature of teams getting caught up in it and living on it too much. And we've already flipped that page, and that page is now etched in history, and we don't need to look back at the history book. So I think the kids handle it well. I think the coaches do a good job of constantly reminding them to progress and not look backwards. So I think we handle it well, and hopefully we'll show that on Friday.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it, and good luck.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
That's Matt Humbert. We'll continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Why the 2023 Kia Sportage plug-in hybrid? It's roomy, it's fuel efficient, it's peppy. It comes with so many extra options. And right now at Smale Kia, get $500 off MSRP plus a level 2 charging cord. So the real question is, why not? Get $500 off MSRP on any new Smale Kia and a level 2 charge cord with all 2023 Kia plug-in hybrids and EV models. And they come with Kia's 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty at Smale Kia.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We appreciate Matt Humbert, the head coach of the Belle Vernon area Leopards, for taking the time. And I do want to say, I messed up. I meant Anthony Cruz, but Zoe Wade's a really good player for them as well. So don't think that he's not a big contributor. He might have his own breakout performance, but it was Cruz who was absolutely the difference maker in that victory. Always enjoy talking to Matt Humbert. Not quite as much as I enjoy seeing him during training camp firsthand, though, where he just takes it to a different level.
Rocking the straw hat. And it was so funny, too. The things that were coming out of his mouth, and we talked to him about it at the coach's show about how funny it was, and he's like, I don't remember that. I don't even know what comes out of my mouth during practice. So
he just
keeps
blacks
things
out.
fresh. Yeah, he blacks out. I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Well, that was our first interview of this show. We're going to have another one upcoming in just a matter of moments with Tasso Whipple, who had an unbelievable showing for the Penn-Trafford Warriors. But it wasn't you or I, Flick, who decided to interview Tasso Whipple.
No.
It was the fans who made that decision.
Yeah, they did. And they did it in a big way. We had over 3,000 votes for our 5 nominees this week. Sometimes we have 4, sometimes we have up to 6, but certainly a great group this week. Obviously, Tasso Whipple leading the way, 27 carries, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus he also caught a receiving touchdown from Johnny Louver in that victory over Woodland Hills. But I mentioned our man Tanner Moody, what a game that he had defensively, made 12 tackles. He was second place in the voting, and that was great to see because the defensive guys don't always get the love. And it's not necessarily on us either, because it's sometimes pretty tough to find defensive stats. We always tell coaches, let us know if you have someone defensively that had a great game, tell us, give us those stats, and we'll nominate them. But obviously they have a lot of things to worry about, so we don't always get those. But congratulations to Tanner for being nominated. Tristan Tavares, 4 touchdown passes in the victory over Fox Chapel. He or Jake Knight could have been nominated. Tyree Turner, 3 touchdown passes, 2 touchdown runs for Greensburg Central Catholic. And we mentioned Carson Heinley, who was just tremendous on the ground and through the air for the Cavaliers. So don't forget, you can vote Sometimes we have the voting start on Sunday, sometimes Monday. So look for it on our social media pages, whether it be on, I guess I've started saying X now. Gosh.
You don't have to.
Look at X/Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook, where you can vote. Want to thank everybody for voting this week and doing so next week as well.
Absolutely. And it was the PT faithful who made their voice heard as they chose Tasso Whipple for our Player of the Week. We'll hear from him momentarily as we continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
I feel like it's definitely very important, like for high school, because a lot of kids, get peer pressured into drinking and doing drugs. So like doing the events like in a school setting, I feel like definitely like try to prevent kids from like going to like parties and drinking and driving and doing drugs and being peer pressured.
We just want to, talk about the dangers of the substance abuse in our community, and we want to help be a part of stopping that.
The Collision Shop by Jason Mignone is your one-stop shop for all things auto body repair. Our experienced technicians and state-of-the-art facilities have you covered on both passenger and heavy-duty vehicle repairs, including scratches, scrapes, and dents, free estimates, body repairs, welding, refinishing, glass replacement, and more. Our all-new alignment and calibration shop has the tooling, equipment, and staffing to ensure top-quality alignment and calibration adjustments for your vehicle. Our friendly office staff is more than happy to assist you through every step of your vehicle's repair process. Visit the Collision Shop by Jason for our complete list of services.
Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. It is time to welcome our Week 2 Westmoreland Sports Network Player of the Week. He is Tasso Whipple, junior running back from Penn-Trafford, and what an excellent game he had against the Woodland Hills Wolverines. Going into Wolverine, Penn-Trafford winning. Tasso carried the ball 27 times, over 200 yards rushing, 220 to be exact, 2 touchdowns, and also a touchdown receiving, so 3 total in the Warriors' victory. Tasso, thank you so much for joining us here this evening, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of things to get into, Tasso. First of all, Penn-Trafford isn't used to losing. I mean, you guys are used to winning and winning championships. For a program that's not used to losing, how important was it for you guys to not start the season 0-3 and get that big win last Friday at Woodland Hills?
Yeah, we had to change our mentality, and when we went against Woody, it was a need. We had to do it, and that's what we did.
Your offense had only scored 7 points in the first 2 weeks of the season, but exploded for 28 points on Friday. What do you think the biggest difference was for you guys against Woodland Hills that maybe you weren't able to do against McKeesport and Cannon Mac?
It was definitely our line. I just trust them with my life. I tell them that before every game, and they really came off the ball hard, and that's the reason for the success we had.
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously the running game got on track big time. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about what, how you were feeling, what the biggest key was for you guys to run for as many yards as you did? It wasn't just you, even though you ran for over 200, but, Ben Grabowski got in the mix a little bit too. So what do you think the biggest key was on the ground for you?
Just run harder. We us as a group didn't run as hard as our potential, but just run harder, and that's what we did, and we had success.
So when you look back at the first 2 weeks of the season, I know we talked kind of offensively what maybe you guys worked on a little bit, but as a team, what do you think prevented you from winning those games, and what did you kind of work through in practice and target in practice, and what were the coaches preaching to kind of get you guys back on the right track?
They were definitely preaching to keep our eyes up, of course, mental strength, the amount of heart you have, stuff like that. Keep going, keep working. And that was basically it, and just to win the game.
Well, let's talk about what your best strength is as a running back. I mean, you kind of splashed onto the scene last year, and then, of course, you have this massive game against Woodland Hills. So I know it's kind of tough sometimes when you look at yourself like, what am I best at? But what do you think you are best at as a running back?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of things I can improve on. I don't know. I think because of wrestling, my balance is a key asset to how I run. But I run too high, so I need to run lower like that. And just my balance, I think, is my best key thing there.
I'm glad you brought up wrestling because it's so important. I hear from guys that do both sports that, they wouldn't be as successful in football if it wasn't for wrestling. So how do you kind of tie both sports together, and what are some of the similarities that maybe you learned in football you can take to wrestling and then vice versa?
Well, from wrestling to football, it's definitely your work ethic. Wrestling is one of the hardest things I've ever done. You really learn a lot through what you can do as a human being. And through football, it's all mental strength too. Coach Wayne really trains us to be mentally strong and basically how to be a man. And I think wrestling does that too.
Well, and you guys had a really good wrestling season. Last year you did as well. Personally, we'll talk about wrestling in the winter when we come out and cover you guys. Talk about what you enjoy most about playing football and for this Penn-Trafford team. Is there anything specific?
It's mostly just the memories. I think of the team as my family. It's they're everything to me, and I'll do anything for them. Just the memories.
I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this before, maybe a little bit before we actually started recording the interview, but you have a pretty unique first name, Tasso. First of all, Tasso Whipple, just a fantastic sports name. But did your parents ever explain to you kind of where it came from? Is there any story behind it?
Yeah, it's my grandfather's name on my mom's side, and it's Greek, and so it's the big Greek family, and they have those unique names, I guess, like that.
Do you feel like it makes you stand out a little bit throughout your life here?
I mean, I was told it's a memorable name, so I guess that's helpful for football. But it's just a name to me.
Absolutely. Definitely makes it stand out. So, well, and would you like to continue talking about recruiting and have it stand out a little bit? Is football something that you'd like to continue playing in college? Are you kind of maybe even considering wrestling, or are you figuring all that out still as a junior?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, I got another probably year and a half to think about it. But I mean, I'd probably pick football over wrestling. If the opportunity comes, I'll probably take the offer to play in college.
Yeah, you certainly have some time here, and you keep putting things together like you did last Friday. Those offers, I'm sure, will be rolling in. Now, you guys play Belle Vernon this week. I know it's a non-conference game, but a lot of pride on both sides. With Penn-Trafford, how much pride you guys have. I know how much pride Belle Vernon has. Does it make you a little more exciting to get to play a team coming off of a state championship and with guys like Quentin Martin on the other side? Does that make you, and playing at home too, does that make you even more get ready for this game?
We get excited, and all of our minds are on Belle Vernon right now. And they're a well-coached team, but I believe in my team. I trust them. So, the goal is to come out on top.
Now, when you watch film on Belle Vernon, what kind of jumps off the page to you personally that they do well that you guys are going to have to kind of counteract here on Friday?
They throw a lot of screens, a lot of flares, stuff like that, and they also run power. We have a plan to stop that, but hopefully it'll work.
Yeah, we don't want to divulge that yet. We'll see if the plan works on Friday night after the game for sure. You mentioned what you'd like to do in college in terms of sports. Who's had a big impact on your life, would you say, Tasso, that's kind of made you the person that you are today? Is there one or two people maybe that you can talk about in your life that has made an impact on you?
I mean, of course, my parents, they raised me. My dad, of course, he taught me at a young age, mental strength, heart, stuff like that. It's all up here. Coach Wayne, of course, he taught me the same exact thing. I owe him everything, and I'm very happy that he is my coach. My wrestling coach, Coach Travis.
Yeah.
My running back coach, Coach Pug. I'm just happy, and I'm thankful for all of them.
Penn-Trafford definitely has a lot of coaches that impact you guys no matter what sport. Tasso, this was great. Thank you so much. Congratulations. I'm sure we're going to do this again, considering you're a junior. Go out and keep ripping up those stat sheets. All right, buddy?
All righty. Thank you.
That is Tasso Whipple, our Week 2 Westmoreland Sports Network Player of the Week. We will preview Penn-Trafford and Belle Vernon, along with many other games coming up on our Week 3 preview right after these messages on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Hi, Westmoreland sports fans. This is Al Gallardo, financial advisor with Lincoln Investment and longtime Westmoreland County resident. Whether it's a traditional or Roth IRA, 403B or 457 plan, mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, or bonds, I can help you navigate the markets and assist you in achieving all of your goals. Call me at 724-309-8337 or email me at agallardo@lincolninvestment.com and we'll get started together. Good luck to all of the area's athletes and coaches this season.
State Representative Mike Reese was a great advocate for the kids in our community. He felt athletics were a vital tool in raising healthy, happy kids. The Mike Reese Memorial Fund offers grants to local youth athletic organizations so that every kid has a chance to play. Funding is available for new equipment, registration fee offset, facility improvements, and more. Visit MikeReeseMemorialFund.com to apply.
Back to our final segment here on this edition of Westmoreland on the Gridiron. We appreciate Tasso Whipple, the junior running back for Penn-Trafford, taking the time to talk to us. And he's a wrestler. Those guys sometimes have a different mentality. You can just tell sometimes that a guy is a wrestler, right?
Well, yeah, and we talked about that. You know, him again saying that wrestling helps him become a better football player. And you talk to any wrestler, they will tell you that wrestling's a really, really hard sport because of the amount of time you have to give to the sport, the practice, being inside that hot wrestling room all the time. You know, I know that not everybody watching this show probably understands wrestling, and I'm not one of them, really. I'm still kind of learning. But, man, those kids put a ton of hard work in there, and that makes them better players in other sports. You heard Tasso say it right there. And how about Tasso talking about where his name comes from? His grandfather, I believe is what he said. His name was Tasso. So it's Greek, he said. So it's certainly a name that you don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. He is the first and only Tasso Whipple that I've ever covered in my more than decade covering
probably the
high
last.
school athletics. Yeah, that's probably a safe bet at this point. Well, let's look ahead to the Week 3 preview, and we've got some really good games on the docket. And I think most notably, outside of 6A, which had already had a couple of conference games, it's the start of conference play for many of the other classifications. So that includes a few of our Westmoreland County teams. So there's a little bit more on the line in terms of some of these games. We'll begin with the ones we broadcast, and Plum at Norwin. That does fit the bill as a conference opener in Class 5A in the Big East. Mustangs have put together a pretty nice season. Matt Morgan has done a nice job with them. For the Knights, an opportunity to really make some noise, and they've got some momentum heading into it, as we mentioned, knocking off Fox Chapel a week ago. How about this for a Westmoreland County battle in 2A conference play? York and Derry area doing a clash of two teams that are, I think, trying to take that next step. And remember last year, York narrowly prevailed against the Trojans. It was a close game that I think was just a field goal difference. So I'm looking forward to see, does Derry area take a significant step forward and win this one comfortably? Does York maybe surprise them a little bit? I really don't know how to evaluate this game because we've seen some good flashes from these teams, both coming off of pretty good showings a week ago.
Yeah, I think so. And I was really encouraged by Kuroda, the quarterback for York. I mean, he really had a great game. He could have been a nominee for Player of the Week, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also threw a touchdown pass, ran for almost 100 yards. So he's coming in with a lot of confidence. York coming in with a lot of confidence after the win over Charleroi. And Derry say the same thing, a close loss to Southmoreland and a victory over Greensburg-Salem. So this should certainly be an interesting game. I think Derry is more capable this year of beating the Cougars. But again, York coming in with a lot of that momentum as well.
Yeah, Raiden Kuroda struggled early against Mount Pleasant when I did the game a couple weeks ago, but he looked much better in the second half. And they didn't come all the way back, but they made a little bit of a rally. So he's a guy that I think the arrow is certainly trending up in terms of what he's able to do for the Yawk offense. This should be a dandy. It certainly was the last couple of years. Belle Vernon area at Penn-Trafford. Keep in mind a 7:30 start time. Penn-Trafford likes a 7:30 starts. We'll have the broadcast of that. I will be on the call along with John Bainbridge. First two were at the golden turf of James Weir Stadium. So I know John Ruane is very happy to be back on his home field against Belle Vernon area. You know, I don't know if it's ever going to really be a rivalry, but I really think that this is a matchup that both teams and now both communities look forward to, because it's the third consecutive year, and it's two teams that, while they've had this head-to-head, have both won state titles. And so I think that means a little bit extra.
That's what I said earlier. I mean, it's becoming a rivalry just because they've played each other the last now 3 years, and because of how much pride each team has, winning football games. That pride shows certainly every time they play one another. So I think it is becoming a little bit of a non-conference rivalry, if you will. Both teams are in Westmoreland County. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this game plays out.
Absolutely. Got to check out our broadcast coverage of the Leopards and the Warriors. We will also have another 5A matchup that will be conference play. And this should be a really interesting matchup because last year it was a stunner. Franklin Regional at Gateway. Remember, that was the game that put the Panthers on the map last year. They really just shut down the Gators offense that was supposed to be so high-powered. Now, Gateway did bounce back and had a good finish to the regular season, but that was what allowed Franklin Regional ultimately to win the conference championship. Now they're going to have to go on the road to Monroeville, very short trek, but it's against the Gateway team that is really sputtering right now, and they're down multiple players. Remy Bose out for the season. He is a D1 talent, and I believe for the second straight week, Brad Birch did not play last week, so I don't know what his status will be, but this is an opportunity. It seems like Gateway could be a little primed to be knocked off once again by Franklin Regional.
This is a complete toss-up for me. Coming into the year, I thought that this would be a really tough game for Franklin Regional because Gateway is going to be coming in after losing to Franklin Regional last year, trying to, prove that it was a fluke, even though it wasn't. But that's the mindset, I'm sure, that you have to have, right? You lose to a team that to not allow you to win the conference championship the year before. So I'm thinking Gateway's coming into this game, and they just might, with a big fat chip on their shoulder. But again, with the injuries, if Brad Birch doesn't play again this week, they might be ripe for the picking again by Franklin Regional. So this is another game that's kind of a toss-up. I don't really know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, and certainly we mentioned Gateway trending the wrong direction. Franklin Regional coming off of two very impressive victories over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if the Panthers can knock off the Gators for 2 consecutive years. The other game we'll have broadcast of Shaler area at Hempfield area. That is a 5A non-conference, but the Titans, they've got a pretty potent passing attack with Keegan Smetanka. So it'll be an opportunity for Coach Kiefer's crew to bounce back after their lopsided loss last week against Greater Latrobe. Some other games across Westmoreland County. Thomas Jefferson at Greater Latrobe. Now, we mentioned before, TJ beat up on Franklin Regional to start the season. I don't think that's in any way a knock on the Panthers. I think it's more a testament to how dominant this Jaguars team is. I have a feeling that this could be Thomas Jefferson's year in 4A, and I know that you say that knowing that Aliquippa is in 4A as well, and McKeesport is in 4A, and Central Valley is in 4A. Greater Latrobe has taken a step forward, but I truly wonder, will they be able to compete with Thomas Jefferson with just how good the Jaguars are, returning their quarterback, returning their star receiver, returning their top 2 running backs, and getting another quarterback via transfer after he had to sit out last year. They're absolutely loaded.
Yeah, I thought this, and again, I hope it is a great game, but after seeing what TJ did to Franklin Regional, and if you want to look at, I know it's all about matchups, and this doesn't necessarily matter, but Franklin Regional gets absolutely hammered by Thomas Jefferson, and Latrobe loses to Franklin Regional. So now Latrobe has to play TJ. What's going to happen? So, again, I know it's all about how you match up against a certain team, but I think you're right, Sean. And if it goes lopsided, it's not about Latrobe. It's just about TJ being absolutely loaded this year.
The one benefit for Ron Brady's crew is that they played Thomas Jefferson twice last year, and they were very competitive in both of those games, both the regular season loss and the playoff loss, and they both happened to be at Thomas Jefferson. So now playing at Memorial Stadium, they hope, okay, we were close last year. Maybe we can benefit even further from playing at home. Can that get them over the hump? I don't know. Thomas Jefferson looks like an absolute juggernaut right now, but I know that Greater Latrobe is a program that is certainly headed in the right direction. Kiski area at Hampton, Apollo Ridge at Ligonier Valley, also on the docket. Sarah Catholic at Burrell, as the Buccaneers look to keep it up after their shutout victory against Valley last week. Jeanette at Fraser, that will be a conference matchup in the 1A Eastern Conference as the Jayhawks, who did make the playoffs last year, look to keep things rolling. Bentworth at Monessen, and then some non-conference games. Greensburg-Salem at Deer Lakes. Southmoreland at Knock. I know not many people probably anticipated this to be a marquee matchup. And while it is non-conference, it is a big matchup because the Scotties are undefeated. The Knock Knights are undefeated. No one saw that coming. They were just really a lousy team last year, but they have turned it around in a big way. They've had a pretty good passing attack. That could be a game that we see a lot of offense go up on the board between Southmoreland and Knock, and another chance to prove themselves as a team that belongs, certainly, with the Scotties. Valley at Mount Pleasant area, and then Washington at Greensburg Central Catholic. That's a good matchup as well. Washington is always a good team. The Prexies are in 2A, so they're a little bit bigger than GCC, and you figure that Washington might be favored heading into that game. But I think it's another litmus test for the Centurions. They had one already against Bishop Canevin, weren't really up to par in terms of that matchup against the Crusaders. Now they get a chance against Washington. And again, these games, they're not conference, but they still, I think, hold a lot of value. So we will look at the two collegiate games on the docket. Seton Hill at East Stroudsburg. That is a 1:05 start on Saturday. It must be on TBS.
Yes.
And then Allegheny at St. Vincent. That is a 1 o'clock start on Saturday as well. Flick, any takeaways from the week 2 schedule, or the week 3 schedule, I should say?
I think there's a lot of intriguing games, aren't there? I mean, you just mentioned one in Southmoreland and Knock. You know, even the Greensburg Central Catholic game there is intriguing. But, I mean, we really have some matchups that, again, you kind of don't know where it's going to go. Franklin Regional and Gateway, Penn-Trafford and Belle Vernon, Derry and York. And Norman and Plum's a massive game to start out conference play because this conference is kind of up for grabs right now, depending on what happens, you know, with Gateway, how healthy they can get. You know, Penn-Trafford getting back on track last week. But I think Plum, you know, has an opportunity here. I think it's wide open in this conference. So Norman and Plum, I think, is one of the bigger games of the week too. So this is, I think, really a week that, you know, not necessarily like other weeks. I think there's just a lot of good games.
Yeah, and I think after this week, you know, at about midnight on Friday night, I think we'll have a pretty good idea at this point of which teams really are legitimate because, you know, some obviously we know some teams are for real. It goes without saying, Belle Vernon, for instance, but is a Southmoreland a legitimate team that can, you know, vie for a home playoff game? I think maybe we find that out on Friday. You mentioned the Norwin Knights. Can they take a step? York and Derry area, same thing. One of those teams is going to be in a good spot because they're going to be 1-0 in their conference. And so I think it is really interesting. The other aspect, I talked to Roger Beidel a few years ago, and they got off to a really good start one season, and they were just destroyed by injuries suffered in the non-conference. And he said, I'm going to keep this in mind maybe in future years because we were trying so hard to win these conference games, and it came at the non-conference games. Right. It came at the expense of our players. By the time we made it to our 5 conference games in the second half of the season, we had so many guys already lost that we weren't able to compete nearly as well. So maybe they might not outright say it, but some coaches maybe do kind of play it vanilla or maybe go a little bit deeper into the bench for the non-conference. And then they say, well, now the season really begins once the conference opener arrives. So I think that's another aspect to consider as well. But that's about all that I got, Flick. Is there anything else you want to mention for our great coverage on WSN?
No, just don't forget that, again, all the games are archived. So if you go to the game and you want to watch back to it when you get home, you can do that. We have a great staff that can keeps track of or keeps our scoreboard updated throughout the night. If you follow us on X or Twitter, you'll see all the scores there from Westmoreland County, but also on our website, westmorelandsports.com, our scores. Sean then does a recap of all of the games. We have our Westmoreland County Stars on that same article every Friday night into Saturday morning. So, we're about the broadcast, but we try to keep everybody updated in other ways too with our written content and our scoreboard. And a shout out to Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol for sponsoring our scoreboard, and shout out to everybody that watches every week. Rush Petter, man, we got to give him a quick shout out. He is one of the biggest fans of Westmoreland on the Gridiron, does a great job of keeping stats for Penn-Trafford, a tremendous person and a tremendous fan of Westmoreland County football, PT, and WSN. So I want to just give a shout out to Rush.
Yeah, I assume be seeing him on Friday night at Warrior Stadium there at Penn-Trafford. Also, by the way, you didn't mention it, so I will have to mention, plug for my own content. We resumed the Westmoreland alum Q&A feature this week. Now, it wasn't football this week, but we will have some football players throughout the rest of this fall. So you want to follow that as well. Check out those articles once a week. We highlight someone who was a standout in high school in Westmoreland County, who is now doing it at a high level collegiately as well. So we'll certainly try to feature some football players that you'll recognize in the weeks and months to come. But I think that's it for now. So let's put a bow on this show. For my colleague, Dan Flickinger, Sean Meyers signing off. We'll catch you again next week and each and every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on the Westmoreland Sports Network. It's Westmoreland on the Gridiron.
Good night.
If McKeesport scores, we'll see what they do with the extra point, and we may continue. In motion, looking to pass, throws it, incomplete, game over, Belle Vernon with the win.
Live from our Seton Hill University studios, this is Westmoreland on the Gridiron on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Here's your host, Sean Meyers.
We welcome you into another episode of Westmoreland on the Gridiron here on the Westmoreland Sports Network each and every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Sean Meyers and Dan Flickinger talking high school football across